The next step that I want to talk about to this project is creating the color paper still life. This project is based off of, or one of the projects in a book by Betty Edwards called Color. She also wrote Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. She talks a lot about how to understand color mixing. And part of the idea of this project is that you're going to pick some different colored paper or fabric to make your still life. It has to be 3D. And the goal of this is that you're picking some very basic colors to start out with. So you're going to try to match that color in paint. So that's one part of color mixing. You're trying to mimic whatever color paper you find in your paint. So that's one part of the project. The second part of the project is that you're trying to make them look three-dimensional. That's why your still life has to be three-dimensional. And you're discovering how to make shadows and highlights within that one simple color that you mixed. And while it starts off sounding simple, oftentimes shadows and highlights take on some colors of their own. Color bounces off the paper that you have it sitting on. It picks up little hints and tints of that blue or yellow that are next to the piece of paper itself. So it's really about discovering subtle little differences in the color of that paper as it goes over a bend or a twist or curve or change in light. Your still lifes can be very simple, they can be elaborate, they can be a little bit representative if you want, but just remember you're going to have to paint these. So if you go really crazy, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming when you try to mimic them in paint form. So I'm going to show a few student examples of photographs that they sent me or took of their pieces. Here's an example of a picture that a student sent me of a still life that they made. So you can see she's got a lot of reds and pinks and blues in there. Remember, you have to have at least two colors, or so you have to have at least three colors. Two can be from that same sort of tint shade family, but you should try to get at least another little color in there that's outside of your tints or shades. So she's got red and pink, which are kind of in that same tint shade family, but she also used the color blue in there. So you can see she's got it set up here. This the still life itself is well set up. She's got good lighting, one strong light source from one side. This is not the kind of image that you want to use for your finished project. You're going to actually want to crop in and think about your composition too. So this would be an example of that same still life set up a little bit more cropped in, thinking about the shadows, thinking where I want the placement of each one of those pieces within the composition. It's something that you have to think about, the angle that you're taking the picture of, because something like this would be more difficult to translate two-dimensionally flat. So you have the aid of the camera to help you really think about what you want your still life to look like. And having all that extra space around the outside can actually be harmful. You want to kind of have it all in there together, right? So that it's nicely evenly arranged. Some of the considerations that you want to think about when you're making your color paper still life, you must have a minimum of 3 colors, as I mentioned before. It must be three-dimensional. You don't want to have the paper flat on the page because you want to be able to have those highlights and shadows within the paper. You must also consider the meaning of the color. You're picking colors that might match your personality. They could just be favorite colors or colors that you're drawn to, but you want to think about it as a representation of you personally. You should have a strong light source. So you could use outside light. You could take a light, like a lamp from in your house, and direct it at it. Remember, you're trying to mimic these highlights and shadows, so it's important that you're going to have a good light source. You should also have clear highlights and shadows, as I mentioned before. That way it'll help you be able to define it and paint easily. You'll be able to see where each highlight and shadow is. That's something we're going to look at as we start to do the underdrawing. And you also want to consider the composition. So as you're taking the picture, use that as your tool that you're going to actually think, this is what my final painting is going to look like. So you should have things arranged on the page as you want them. You should also fill up that composition. Every piece should be considered. There should be something interesting happening throughout the picture plane. Like I said, the still life should fill the picture plane itself. You want to think about that, filling your whole piece of paper, that there are areas of interest everywhere. So what I want you to do is you're going to take some images of your still life and you're going to upload it to this assignment post. You can put as many as you want as you're trying to decide. Like if you have a couple you can't decide between, go ahead and upload them to this assignment post. If you know for sure you've got the one, you can just upload one. Um, but this assignment post, you're going to get some feedback once you submit it, and I can help you choose, or I might give you directions to retake an image. That way, you know which one you're going to use for your final piece.